Hi, Michael. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Lisa. Great to see you again, too.
How have you been?
Oh, I've been real busy. I have been working. I've had a few other projects I've been working on, but I've been spending a lot of my time on the Ball-Paylore home, of course.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing your progress. So, last time we talked, you had the cardboard model going, and you were showing us some of the basic structural details of it. And you were just talking about a few of the smaller things that you were getting into, some of the finer details you were getting into. So, where are you at now?
Yes, well, right. When last we spoke, the what was on the table here was the cardboard model, and I know we were talking about uh, the importance of that and what the what the purpose is of that. I still have the cardboard model, but now what I've done is I'm starting to move into the actual materials that the final model will be made of. So now we've got actual brickwork happening here. This will be the final model. And the windows we talked about last time briefly, they're laid out here with the beams coming between them. And so yeah, I'm moving ahead now with the final model. And you'll also notice that at least for this part of the project, I have the blueprint of the floor plan here on the base, the actual base of the model. And so that's helping me too with orientation and just making sure I'm cutting things to the right lengths and such.
Yeah, I noticed that right away, and I was wondering about that. I was curious. It does seem like it would be a good way to make sure that everything is going to come together and fit properly, rather than having to redraw it. So, how are you just going to use that temporarily? You said the floor plan.
Yes, right. It'll have its time here when it is of use. But then I will, when I get all the major walls constructed, then I'll be able to refer to that, but it won't be as critical. And so at that point, what I'm going to do is I have some, you know, this as we discussed, the whole floor is concrete. What I did was I've picked up some sheets of paper here that I'm going to when the blueprint comes off, I'll be laying these sheets down there just to give me the feeling of the large gray surface, because that'll impact our color studies and things too. But that'll be happening next when that is removed. I can't go ahead and get to the actual finished painting of the concrete floors yet because there's still too much work that's going to happen on top of that surface, and it'll get scarred up, and it will be a problem. It'll get too scarred up as the process evolves. But that's the plan.
So it sounds like then what we see standing, the walls that we see standing there aren't actually attached to the base yet because you're gonna. So that's just sort of preliminary, but they're the actual walls that you're going to be using to construct the piece. You're saying.
Yes, so they are the actual walls. Everything is just kind of perilously balanced on here right now. But I am using this, and as you can see, I have the piece on a Lazy Susan, and this is really helping me too to visualize it in the round, because it's very much in the round. And this way I can do that easily without having to take things apart and readjust them. So this is working out really good. Just kind of hit on the idea one day, and then yeah, so that's really helping. But you can see we're getting exterior walls in here. These here, for example, these are the two bedrooms here and here, and these are the patio doors that take us out from the interior space to the exterior. And what's kind of neat too, as you really get down to finalizing these shapes, there's some overhang here that hangs over the foundation on the end. And then you can see the cutout here for the sliding doors that will go into place. And what I like about this is you get this this rectangle gives you a sense for the pitch of the roof. And it's these kind of visual clues now that will give the observer reinforce what's happening. And oh yeah, that's not a straight roof. That roof's pitched and this much. So yeah, it's all these things are starting to come together, but oops, nothing's glued together yet, as you can see. Things do fall apart on occasion, but that's okay. It's coming together.
So what are you making the walls out of? What material are you using?
Well, actually, I'm usually using a commercially available brick product in our scale, but then I'm laminating a layer inside of it too, so that we get the correct wall thickness. There's a couple different wall thicknesses in the house, but most of the main structural walls are rather wide. So that's why there's this spacer put in between there to get us to the correct wall spacing. There are some other walls, interior walls, which are not as thick, but in the main structure I've approached so far, this is what I'm working with.
Now, I remember from our last conversation that you were talking about the beams, the ceiling beams, and how you were going to organize that so that the roof could actually lift up. And you were also talking about the type of wood that you were going to use for those beams. So I'm guessing the beams you have there are the actual beams for the final project. Is that correct?
Yes, these wooden beams are the ones that will be used for the final project. And so it's interesting. On some parts of the model, I know what the length of these beams has to be. Like here in the bedroom, the beams are parallel in nature, and they go from wall to wall. And we can see that in some of the images of the bedroom, where we can see those parallel beams going across the top of either bedroom. But then when those beams get to the central, more open plan part of the home, as you can see here, we're looking out through the glass windows in the back, then there's a radiating pattern that happens. So some of that's already starting to happen. Some of these major beams come right through the exterior roof over the bedroom and to the central point of the house. I don't know how long they have to be yet, so I haven't gone about the final sizing of those yet. I've left them longer than they need be. And then just to really keep things as accurate as possible, I cut extra beam lengths right away. When I had the saw set up so that I could guarantee that they would all be the same, I cut a number of beams. So now I have extras. If I cut it wrong, or maybe it's a temporary thing that has to be glued in permanently later, I've got more stock available to go ahead and accommodate that. So that's kind of some of the thinking that you try to do in advance. So you're not trying to set up the saw to the exact same dimension to cut the exact same parts. Do a bunch at once.
Mm-hmm. So as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that those beams are such an integral part of the basic structure. Are you going, and you were talking last time about the stains that you were going to put on that wood so that it would have the same color and tone. Is that something you're going to do? Have you done that already? Are you going to be doing that next? Will you do that after the fact? How does that happen in the process?
Well, just about everything in this model right now is not glued together. And that's because what I will do after I get everything test fitted and adjusted to the exact sizes, then I'll deconstruct the model, take things apart, paint them separately, and then reassemble. The windows we talked about last time, those little windows are just double stick taped in place right now so that I can remove them. They're like an aluminum color, so I'll paint them separately and then reapply those later. In the meantime, with the windows out, I can approach all the brickwork and not have to worry about, a slip of the brush. Plus, the windows are going to be sprayed. The brickwork is probably going to be brush painted. And as you mentioned too, then at that point, then right now the wood is all natural finished. Once I have everything sized and in the appropriate locations, then I'll probably mark them or code them somehow, and then go ahead and apply those finishes and stains like we talked about.
Sounds great. Exciting to see it coming together. As I'm looking at the model, I can't help but wonder how the construction of a miniature relates to the construction of an actual home. I mean, I don't know if you have any experience with that, but I'm thinking about how a house is framed up and how this house is being framed up. Do you think there's a relationship there?
Oh, definitely. And I think the way we're going to present this model with this open beam, the beams will be part of the base model, and they will stay there when the roof is raised to see the interior. So I think the visitor is going to get a really uh, fine visualization for what the structure, what the bones are like. You know, how this, what's this thing about how do these beams all connect and tie in to make a structure that's a non-conventional roof, you know? Because I think we've all seen plenty of homes under construction with the roof beams up, the usual standard type pitched roofs, at least here in the Midwest. And then, but this is different. And this shows off the slight slope, creates that feeling of space. So we have a feeling for how high these rooms really are, and shows off the structural, the bones, like I like to call it, of the structure.
I love it. Uh, I'm looking at the model, and now that you have it turned around, and I'm seeing the patio area, and I'm thinking about those wonderful awnings that we talked about last time. And last time you just showed us very briefly. So, can you talk a little bit about, are you going to start working on that in the next phase, or are you working on that a little bit right now too?
Well, you know, now that I've made some progress with the brickwork, and I understand how to work with it in this with these weird trapezoidal shapes and things. Um, you know, I feel like, okay, I've you know, I feel comfortable with that, and now I can go ahead and I can start to work on some other aspects of the house. Um, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop this. I have a couple more major walls I want to put in here, which radiate and really give you the section of the pie shapes of the hexagon. But um, because I like variety and I like to skip around and work on different things, I will be working on the sunshades for the back. And as you can see here, it's very interesting. They are meant to be moved by one person and not a particular big build. They slide around in this track that goes around the outside perimeter of the patio. So I'll be starting to construct these metal tubular structures, which are the sunshades. And you notice they've got that wonderful corrugated texture on the top too. So that's going to be really rich, and I'm excited to make those up. Those are all going to be, all the frames will be made out of brass rod as I see it right now. And so I'll be soldering that whole, those structures together because there's two of them. And then I'll be working also on the track and the wheels that sit in the track, as well as those that ride along the track at the top, because there's two tracks, one at the top and one at the bottom, and then the panels slide around the patio. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. And also, you know, uh, going ahead and examining our wonderful color palette here, and you know how that relates to the different rooms. So I'll be starting to develop my final color samples, and then that's where, you know, the gray paper will act as a guide too, because it'll give me a feeling for what that concrete surface looks like, you know. So I'll be able to see these colors in relation to that type of gray, and just to make sure everything's looking right.
Sounds good. When you were talking about the awnings and how they move, it made me think about your other experiences, your other miniatures that you've made, and your past experience as a toy maker. And I wonder how some of those experiences, particularly the toy making, how that might influence what you're doing with this project, or how that might have influenced other miniature projects as well. Could you share a little bit about that? Did that have an influence on this, the design of how you're going to create that track for the awnings?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm constantly, you know, referring back to those past experiences. I was a toy inventor for a dozen years, and every day we were designing new mechanisms. We worked on some board games that had moving parts and things to create that excitement or that reveal. Or you know, sometimes you when when someone takes the last piece out of a game part, boom, it explodes or something. So I've worked on things with movement like that. Also in the miniatures world, I've created some structures, a barn and an old warehouse that had industrial sliding doors, the ones we've probably all seen, with the metal track that rides on top of the opening, the doorway, and then there's usually wheels that slide back and forth in that track. It's usually like a channel, like a C-shaped channel that then the wheels can rotate in, and that's very much like what's happening here. We've got a channel that's going to be positioned around the perimeter, this yellow line here, same kind of thing. It's a track, the wheels ride in that. And a similar situation here up at the roof. So yeah, I've been down this path. It's not the same. Every situation is different, but I do have enough past experience that I already have ideas cooking up about how to execute this, how to make it work, and ultimately how to make it work too from outside of our display case, so that you don't have to lift the lid to be able to animate some of these things.
Looks great. As I look at this, I can't help but think about how being that it's a modern house, it's made with a lot of simple planes, and even though it's kind of a sophisticated shape, being in a hexagonal shape, but it's simple planes and not a lot of detail, and yet you've got the brick, you've got the cement, you've got the wood, so there's lots of different textures going on here. You were talking about the corrugated sunshades. um, I really love that element of this house, and I bet that is something that keeps it really interesting as you're working on it. You've done a lot of mid-century uh, buildings, rooms, different things. Is that something that you notice that as you're working, the surfaces are really dynamic, even though the shapes are simple?
Yes, there's a real correlation, I think, between the mid-century movement and what's happening here. Very direct. There's a minimal number of elements, and there aren't flashy interior decorative motifs or anything. So you've got simple elements to work with, but if that sort of demands that they all be executed very crisply and cleanly and with great detail, because your palette is sort of limited in what you're working with. But if you go ahead and approach each one of those elements, the corrugations on the roof, the brick pattern, like you said, the finishing on the wood, um, then it's going to have that minimal richness that we appreciate from things of that era.
Yeah, and that's what makes it exciting to look at. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to come together. I'm looking forward to seeing how your color palette is going to play out in the next step. Anything else that you want to share with us about what you're going to do in the next phase?
Well, as you mentioned, yeah, the color palette is a big thing. I'm going to start mixing colors, and I need enough volume of them, so I've got to make up some volumes of paint to go ahead and complete the whole all the parts of the project. And the palette is, it's very interesting. So that's really going to be fun to explore, and very mid-century. And it relates to the heating and the passive heating and cooling too. So those are all things too that we'll be able to point out as the model progresses and as the model's presented at the museum. And I'm going to be erecting more walls out of the brickwork, and continuing the beams, and really locating this central spindle here of the building is where our roof is going to raise. So I'll be working on the engineering part of that too, to go ahead and make that all hidden inside the fireplace, which is at the central core of the building. So that's going to be part of what I'm working on. A lot of different aspects, and some engineering, some color, some physical building. So, and even sourcing some materials. There's some real fine little grill work and vents, and I've been able to locate some perforated metal pieces that are going to just have that delicate, right kind of look for like the air vents that we all have in our houses. So So yeah, lots of things to be working on here, and that's going to keep it fresh for me and keep it exciting.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing another phase. So I hope you have a lot of fun in the next coming month. And thank you for sharing the progress today. And I guess we will see you in about a month.
Sounds great. And thank you, Lisa, for the opportunity to share this. I really appreciate it. You know how it is when we're in our studios, you as a painter and me as a whatever this is, miniaturist. You know, people don't come by, people don't see our work. You know, I mean, it's just we're toiling away, and then all of a sudden, boom! It's in a gallery or it's in a museum. So you know, I think it's really nice for our audience to be able to share this and be a part of the process too, because it is so interesting and oftentimes behind the scenes. So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks again to you and your staff for the great communication and getting me the information I need to really do this job to the best of my ability.
All right, you're welcome. Have a wonderful rest of the day. I'll
Thanks.
talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.